Hey, everybody.
Hey, Andrew from Sydney, or g'day, should I say g'day? Get into
How you doing, Sandra?
How are we? Oh, we've got someone in already. Doug from Melbourne. How are we going?
It's only 9 a.m. where you are, right?
It is. It is. What time is it in your neck of the woods?
2 p.m. California time.
Well, you've eased into the day. I'm just starting to ease into the day.
Andrew Nichols from the UK. Good to see you.
Oh. Hi, Andrew. How are we?
Facebook user.
Facebook user. Hey, Sandra and Andrew. Nice.
Yep.
What's been happening, Andrew? Anything exciting? Oh, Stefan's coming in. Hi, Stefan. How are you?
So, yeah, speaking of Stefan, I just did a wonderful event with Stefan. So, talking about good things that we're working on. And he's got a new show that he's focusing on. It's quite nice. So thank you, Stefan, for all that you do.
Very interesting. And I'm jealous, Stefan, when I see all your images of the snow. I'd love to be out there with the camera. Andrew's 10 p.m. UK time. Well done, Andrew.
All different time zones here.
I create from the golden heart of everything, which is you and I. Oh.
Yeah, that makes me curious. So I need to remind people to give StreamYard permission to show their name and profile pic on Facebook. So I'll be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. That's right underneath the live. You should see a link for StreamYard.com/Facebook. Give it permission so I can give credit for wonderful comments like that from the golden heart of everything. Hannah from Belgrade, Serbia.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Karen. So Karen was the one with that wonderful quote. Good to see. She does wonderful work too, Karen Alsop.
She does.
In fact, I think we're going to do a live with her soon enough. So that'll be great.
Yeah.
Good to see you here, Karen. And we got Rose here from New Zealand.
New Zealand's my second home, Rose, because I lived there for about 10 months. I did my mature working holiday there.
Nice. And Stefan asks Sandra, how are things in Australia?
Look, they're really good, Stefan. I mean, it's like everything in the world, but we've just had lots of rain in Sydney, lots of flooding, so everything's all good. Always got to look at the bright side. I think
it's like summer, right?
Side.
It's summer there.
It is summer, and we've just had 2 days solid rain.
And when you do like a heat wave week, how hot does it get?
I've got to put it in your temperature.
That's like degrees.
So, yeah, because some of you may not know, I used to be a tour guide before, the pandemic. And so I used to take Americans and Brits around Australia. So I had to do the American conversion and then the Australian. Right. So what was it, about a week ago, we got up to 100 in your temperature from the States. If you go to Uluru or the centre of Australia, you would easily be sitting at 120 in your temperature. So a bit like your Death Valley.
Wow, that's intense. And how long might a heat wave last where you are?
It just depends where you live on the East Coast or whether you're in the middle. But like for us, our summer will go from December right through to February. Christmas, January is usually about the hottest, and I don't do well in the heat. Yeah. As we spoke, coming from a Celtic background, with the red head, I fade. Oh, another Aussie. Good to see the Aussie contingent.
This one, yeah, another Aussie here, yeah. Carrie, you can see here. Karen says it's lovely in Melbourne. Feeling for Sydney.
There's a love-hate relationship with Melbourne and Sydney, but I do love Melbourne. I do miss Melbourne. The coffee down there is absolutely brilliant.
Nice. Excellent.
I'm looking forward to this one. This is going to be something different, Andrew.
Yes. So other people are joining. Let us know where you're watching from. And
I'm reading the comments. Oh, it's going spring. Yes.
Daughter lives in Melbourne, so I come to Australia quite often.
Yeah. Oh, you got to visit Sydney, but Melbourne is beautiful.
So Stefan, who's in East Coast, we are going from a spring-like break of a day here, right back to a major snowstorm tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the weather's a little bit all over the place.
And Andrew in the UK, we've had 3 storms, one after the other, and another on the way.
Yeah, I've heard over in Europe, over in that neck of the woods, it's been pretty bad. I'll have to get in the winter clothing soon. Like, gosh. I saw your picture, Andrew, where you're walking around with, a winter's day, and I'm like, I cracked up laughing.
Well, yeah, I was kind of making fun of the fact that, in Los Angeles, if, it's winter here, but, if it gets down to like 60 or 58, then people say how cold it is. So it's kind of making fun of that idea. But it's pretty nice for other people who are going through snowstorms.
Exactly.
So just wanted to remind
cross section here coming in.
As people come in, I wanted to remind everyone that the topic for today is, do you create from vision or instinct? So please let us know in the comments your philosophy on that, or your reality. Do you create from vision or instinct?
Or
as a digital artist, photographer, or both, right?
Yeah.
Takes turns.
Stefan wants that Adobe t-shirt. Yeah,
I think I posted the link in the comment thread of the live that we did to the Adobe store. Yep. They have a whole bunch of apparel. So you can get like sweatpants, baseball caps. I've got like some of these like little Photoshop things.
All the little doodads.
Little badges and stuff, yeah. So.
Well, I've had a big couple of days, haven't I, Andrew? I've got a new PC, brand new.
Should have had you upload a photo of it, It started off as a disco box, and then now it's...
It did. When I turned it on and the disco lights came on, I thought, what have I bought? What have I bought? Oh, Karen, 95%.
Yeah, we got some answers coming in. We have to jump to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to say I'm jealous, though, of your computer, though. I mean, you say 64 gigs of memory, and what was the terabyte space for the storage?
64 RAM, latest processor. It's got bells and whistles I don't know about, but anyway.
And how many terabytes of storage? Didn't you say?
12 terabyte of storage. So
she's not messing around, everybody. I'm telling you, this is a digital artist from Australia. You can rock and roll with that powered up computer.
I am. I've called it the mothership. It's on time warp
appropriate.
Speed. Yep.
Appropriate. Yeah.
Ooh, so we have vision.
So yeah, let's jump in. So Karen says, let's go back to the original question so everyone knows where we come from. So yeah, do you create from vision or instinct? And Karen says, I would say 95% from vision. I usually envision my piece and then go to work bringing it to reality. Yeah, and Karen has a lot of beautiful work too. So
she does. Yep.
And Karen does a lot of composites with a lot of animals, and animals kind of in human kind of story, like storytelling. So I would imagine that vision is very important for that. Very nice.
Runs a masterclass, and that's how I met Karen, being a student and then coming into the mentoring. And it's really great with different styles.
Excellent.
And how we approach it. So 12 terabytes.
Let's see. Stefan says a mix of vision and instinct. Always just create, most of all. Yep. Keep it going. Always just
please, because we don't want to dive into the topic.
I don't know what this means. Swap you.
Yep.
Maybe he means this, that I did this.
Don't know whether he wants the computer or not. I paid too much for it.
He wants to swap his computer for yours, maybe, right?
No way, Andrew, if that's what you meant.
Yeah, and Stefan says 12 terabytes. How many NFTs is that? One.
No idea. That's too technical.
One NFT. And then Andrew says he sketches them down and then tries and then makes them a reality. Yep, great. It's fun to see that. Some people are very strict where they do the sketch and then they bring the elements together and they build upon that, and that's what they have. And then, like with me, I tend to just I have the vision, and then I jump in and start executing and kind of tweaking it to the mood that I want. And then Douglas says, mostly from vision, but it often ends up a bit different in the end. Yeah,
I think we can all relate to that one.
Oh, twists and turns.
So, and that's really great sharing, because one of the reasons that we put the title vision and instinct, and it's what our perception of vision or instinct is. And I was saying to Andrew earlier that couldn't sleep, this morning for various reasons. Had a phone call at 3:30, and I looked up the dictionary online. Who has a dictionary, the old version anymore?
Right.
And the word, I'll just have a little look. What does the word visual and instinct mean? An instinct is fixed pattern behaviours and traits. Right. And then visual is producing mental pictures, seeing and feeling. And so they're the definitions from, the Macquarie Dictionary. But why vision or instinct? So visual in our perception is what we think and see. And sometimes that can happen, but visual also comes into, I have a vision and I'm going to be methodical in my planning. And so that can be a way of doing or creating images. Instinct can be that you go back to those traits and those behaviours of creating. And so you can be methodical again. Or instinct, and I don't know if some of you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is that when you're creating an image, it can sometimes come from the gut feeling of what do you need into that image. And that's what that's for me, is that I start with a vision, and then very much when I'm creating, that then comes a gut feeling. What am I going to put in that image? And what is the story? Oh, we got some great comments coming in.
Yeah, Keith Johnson, who I know in Los Angeles as well. He says, used to have idea books, big books with blank pages for keeping photos, sketches, and things for inspiration back in my photo school days. And what about now, Keith? Do you still have kind of a casual note diary for ideas, or do you just kind of go out and shoot? What would you say you do now, Keith? Good seeing you here, Keith.
How do you work, Andrew? I mean, are you methodical? Are you visual? Do you plan to the nth degree what you're going to create?
Yeah. Should I jump into some of my images, or do
you?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll add that to stream. So yeah, here's one image where I think I had this general idea. So I had a general idea of a face. And I think originally I had the idea of maybe a realistic skull coming through. And then when I found this face that has kind of floral accents to it, it's decorative edges, I felt that a realistic skull didn't make sense. So then I was looking for something that had more like the Mexican kind of stylization of the skeleton and the Day of the Dead. And so I found a really nice illustration that had some very nice patterning that went very well with the edges of this face. And so they kind of overlapped. So there was the overlap of the first image, the portrait, with the kind of textural stylization of the skeleton. And I kind of made that work. And then, as you've seen, I'm a bit obsessive with the ocean type imagery. It's just a very kind of visual metaphor for the state that I like, a kind of meditative state, a kind of otherworldly place. So I brought into that realm, and I think originally the colors were very, aqua and typical ocean colors, but I brought them more in this kind of brownish and darker blue kind of series. And then so that's an example with one. So it started with a vision, but became, I moved the flow of what fit better. And then here's another one that I've worked on, started with a kind of classic sculpture, but putting it in a different atmosphere. So kind of a mixture of ocean and forest. And, once again, I like to, create a world, but I change the mood with color. So I was doing color grading. So originally it might have been very green and blue, and I brought in more the kind of burgundy or purple accents with the blue. And I really love this kind of ocean imagery and the fish floating around. So it's sort of like he's stabilized in the middle, but then the fish floating around makes it so the whole thing is not stable, but it's kind of flowing. And then this one, which got a good reception on Instagram and the other social networks, was the idea that becoming water. So it was once again a kind of meditative state. But I wanted to create something mysterious. So I liked the idea of a nighttime guy walking solitary on the street. And I had these kind of worlds overlapping. And I think I did also take this one into a similar color theme with the purples, but then I thought it was too much, and I brought it back to the colors of water. So it'd be more realistic to that motif. And then,
so Andrew, can I ask a question on that? When you create that, is it purely from the visual that you're coming, or do you find you go into what I call instinct, the set behaviors? This is my workflow. This is what I'm doing, and do it that way, or do you shift in between the two?
Well, I think I have a vision, but then the vision is kind of more instinctual. Like I'll have this idea becoming water, and then I just find elements that work, and I kind of play with them, and sometimes they work very well, and it becomes a very simple image, and then other times it's just not working, and I swap it out for something else, and I might go in a totally different direction. So, Keith says I should give scuba diving a try for a real underwater.
I just saw that. I saw that comment. I get that feeling too, Keith. I think when I looked at a couple of the images, I think of Atlantis, that city that's under the ocean.
I think it would be wonderful to do scuba diving, but I think you have to be trained and go through all that, and I'm not sure I have the patience for that. But yeah, Stephen says, I love the ways you both create. Super talented.
Thank you, Stephen.
So I'd like to ask you, Sandra, what does it say? Or explore the tide pools with a minus tide. I'm not sure what that is.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Sandra, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So switching over to you.
Yes. So this is the thing that I like, Andrew, about these chats is, as creatives, to get together and stimulate conversation with some of these comments, because we all have a passion for creating, but we all do it differently. And for me, for this image, when I look at this was one of my images that that just started purely out of the basis that I hadn't created something for a while. And so I went to my go-to, and my go-to is what I call my instinct, Sandra. And I just went through, I know when I want to create something and I don't have any ideas, I will go to textures and work with textures because I can find I get a quicker result, because I don't have to think too much of the technicalities of Photoshop, cutting out and doing all of those things. But for this, the idea came from, I started off with the foreground. So these are all my images and my textures that I create. So I started with the foreground and I put the middle tree in, and I was going to do it in a square crop, methodical, instinct, but it just wasn't talking to me. The colours worked for me, the tree worked for me, and then it just became boring with one tree sitting in grass. So then I went into visual and started to think outside the box. And I went, and this is what I do, I wonder. So then I put the two trees on the side. So I just did the uneven number. But then I looked deep visually and started to look at these branches on the trees. And then so the story started to tell or speak to me. And this is how I work. It's very much from feeling and getting those elements. So the two trees, the middle tree and the one on the left, represents a family and its connection. And so, and this came in when we were in lockdown. So that connection's there and family are connected. But then that other tree that's on the right-hand side is very much trying to reach for contact to people. And it's got this distance. So for me, I went for instinct first, then visual and feeling. And so that's the story that's in there. And if you look at the grass, it's very disjointed. And that's my expression of going, it's very what would I say, uncertain in these times. So there's some stories within the stories. And I do laugh because, you know, I whack in a bird in some of my images. I just like putting in a bird just for the sake of putting in a bird. And so visual started, or no, methodical it started, instinct, and then I went to visual, and then I let it, just ran with it. So that's the story behind that one, Andrew. And sometimes people won't see that, but that's what I think the beauty is of creating. And then I've got my...
Can I ask, quick question. So you have the elements of the tree, and then you have what I presume would be clouds or sky background, and then you have an image of the grass, but you have an image of the grass, and then you also add all your textures, and you just keep adding and adding, correct?
Yep. So my base will be the grass. That's my foreground. Then I put in my textures. And so I create my own textures from my own photos, and I use textures in some of my images for color grading, and I build up the depth of my color that way. And then with the trees, I find a little exercise, and I don't know if others do it, but if I'm not being creative, I'm still working, and I'll cut out trees or I'll cut out elements, and they're ready to put into my images. So that's just the little things that I do. So nice, but that grass was there.
Nice. And there's some nice comments. So Karen says, I love how differently you approach your art to me. When we find our flow and style, it's incredible what comes from that. Always beautiful work, Sandra.
Thank you, Karen. That's much appreciated. And, you know, it's nice to have the comments. Thank you. But like, I think we all create beautiful work because it all speaks to our soul. Yep. You know, and I think that's what's important.
And then Rose... Yeah, I was going to say, and Rose asked, did you photograph any of the pictures in the tree photo, or did you use stock images? I
certainly did. Thanks, Rose. That was a great question on that. These are boab trees that are in Australia, in a place called Broome, which is really outback, and top part of Australia on the western side. So I photographed one tree, and then I duplicated the tree, but then I used warp to get the branches moving a little bit differently. So every element in this is my own photography. I've just created the artwork from it. But, you know, I do use stock image, or some will go shock horror. I do use pixel squid. But, you know, if I want a quirky castle, Andrew, I can't photograph it. You know, you use your resources, you know.
And Stefan says, I love the concept and the image, Sandra. So peaceful, puts me in a dreamy frame of mind.
Thank you. And I mean, like, you know, Andrew, your work there, when you look at your work, what I love about your work is the many layers, the stories. So my eyes scanning constantly and looking. And even now I've just noticed the smaller detail when I saw this image, and I went, there's something in the background on the road. I don't know what it is. Signs.
Yeah. So like an example on the right side here, what kind of can captivate me is while I'm building this is getting to a point where I've created something that has its own depth. So, you know, you have one plane where the guy's walking, and then what looks like it could be moving into like a forest. And then I mingle that with, you know, deep sea coral type of imagery, but then there's like a patch of water that I created that looks like you can go diving into that. So that is something I really enjoy, creating that. Yeah, Keith says many layers to build your story. Yep.
Yes.
Photoshop. And then Keith, I think Keith was asking this of you. So let me go back to your image. And Keith asks, what sizes do you usually create, or just depends on the piece?
Yeah, good question again, Keith. So when I'm doing, because when I start I start with a blank layer on this, and I'll usually create around about the 6,000 to 4,000. I do it sort of the size of my camera. And then by doing that, for me, I can get different compositions. So I could easily work this into a square format if I wanted. And then I can do it in a panorama 16:9. I can crop it down a little bit. So I usually do that 6,000, 4,000. If I'm working in a square format from a blank, I'll probably work on about 4,000, 4,000. So I still do it at a size of a camera photo.
Let's say one thing that I learned years ago that it's kind of a dangerous thing to do is if you get stuck in a certain kind of size that you create, and that size is something that you're sharing for social networks, and then someone wants to buy it and make a print of it, it's just not appropriate at times. So I had some pieces I had done in the past, and they were like 8 inches by 8 inches or something. And so someone wanted to print it out, and I was a little embarrassed that was the original size. So I think years ago, I'd been creating for years, but then only a couple years ago did I start creating larger and then resizing for social, and always having that larger original layered PSD. And then just for me, just to reveal, I do keep my layered PSD files, even though it takes up a lot of room on external drives, because I'm always aware that there might be someone who says, you didn't create that. And then I want to be able to have the layered file and either screenshot it or be able to send it to someone if they're curious, But the one thing I wanted to say about your work that I like is, it tells this nice story and it has a nice mood. But it also has these nice textures. And with these textures, it really reminds me of my days of being a printmaking major in college. So, I see etching in it and I see lithograph in it, which is really nice.
Yep. I'm just saying, some big is beautiful. Yes, Doug, you like to print big. And that's one of the reasons. That's a good point, Andrew, very much, that I learnt the lesson too. I did the standard 1080, and then someone wanted to buy a print, and I just couldn't do it. But I've got one more image, if I can share that, Andrew, and then we'll get in and ask some questions.
Yeah, let's see. Nice.
Yeah. So this one here, again, is another story. And again, it represents a certain story that resonated with me at a particular time. And I think that's what creatives do. Something may happen and that generates your thinking. So the story of this, again, it's how I use textures. So I use the texture in the foreground. That was a texture I created from grass foliage, and then I used Photoshop brushes. And then there's that tree again. I like that little tree, and there's the bird. But then the textured sky in the background, again, one of my own photos, and I've created my own textures, and then I blend them together. But the story on this was in 2020, one part of Sydney was in lockdown, and they were waiting for midnight. And at midnight, they had freedom. And so I got thinking, because I thought they had been locked up over Christmas. This is just how my mind works and how I feel with an image. And this is just a little bit of a low res on this one. But the tree represents a person. The bird's cage obviously represents being locked up and being confined. And there's the bird that escaped the bird's cage, waiting for that midnight, and the moon represents midnight. And at the stroke of midnight, then freedom came. And so that was the story. And for me, colour's very important. And that's how I work with my colours. And so with this, I was visual. I knew what I wanted, and I was then methodical in these are the elements that I want to tell the story. But my instinct, and this is where we're coming back to it, my instinct is that I have the skills, and you're still learning. You never know everything in Photoshop. But what I do is have the skills to create. And so that becomes into what I call the instinct. Okay, the texture didn't work for me. What can I do? I'll do a couple of little, tricks. And that's the image. And I've called it Midnight Freedom on this one. It still resonates with me. It's just got a little story to me. Yeah, so that's just nice. How I create.
Very nice. And Andrew says a lot of great creations come out of lockdowns.
Very true, Andrew. Very
The one thing I
true.
was going to say is I love the, it really has a like an oil painting feel too. So it really reminds me of oil painting.
Yeah, and I think that's my style, Andrew. I do more what I call photography art. And it's for me, it's about transporting to another world. And I think similar to your work, Andrew,
Yeah.
within there.
I mean, it really has a feel of like I almost feel like I can smell the oil paint, like as if I was in a museum, it's got the.
Oh, I never thought of that. That's
feel.
a good, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it has that real feel of it. Like it looks like it was really painted.
Yeah.
And then Rose says, have you ever created an image around the Sydney Opera House?
Yes, I have. I'll share that. I don't know whether I can bring it up now, but because I'm still learning where I've got all my folders at the moment with the new computer. But I'll post that up on Digital Art, Andrew. So that's one of Andrew's groups.
Right. So
and I'll
come join the Digital Art Group.
Yep.
Facebook.com groups, The Digital Art Group, or just go to Facebook and search top left, The Digital Art Group.
So I'll post that up there. And Rose, if you haven't joined the group, join the group. There's lots of lovely work, so you'll know what I've created for my fantasy opera house. But Andrew, I'd like to sort of put some questions out now to everyone that's joined us is, what now does the word visual and instinct, mean to you and your process? Because it's very much like we all have personality traits. We also, if some of you have done Myers-Briggs on management style, all of those things, we have a go-to when we're creating. And I think that was one of the reasons of this discussion was, are you visual or do you just go to the instinct? And instinct can be, I'll just be very methodical and I'll just go through my plan. And there's not right or wrong. Everyone's different. And that's why we wanted to do that. So I'd love to hear some of the comments coming through.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask, so one thing it seems that a lot of us have in common is we have a vision, but we're flexible enough to move with the instinct and kind of make changes or go into a different direction. What I'm really curious about, is there anybody who just kind of freeform creates, does not have a vision, but has a grouping of images or just goes into, say, Photoshop and just starts creating? Anyone do that? Let us know in the comments.
That's an interesting question. Oh, look, they're all
very
thinking.
Kind of abstract way of working, right? If they were to do that.
I can hear the cogwheels thinking from everyone that's in there, Andrew. Is
it your cogwheels or the new computer?
No, mine's on warp speed. Like we got there, but
yeah, let us know.
Do you? Oh, that's an interesting. I'm going to go. I can be abstract that I start with nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I'll grab arbitrary images sometimes and then see what I can create, what comes from that. But I don't know if I've created just like abstractly though. I think there's always been some type of vision.
Yeah. Yeah. I would start with a photo. I would start with a background, or to me, what I call a background, a landscape or an element of texture or something. So that image with the trees that I put up, I started with a texture first. I don't use textures at the end. I start with the texture. That's how I get my depth.
All right. So Andrew says, I have a photo, then see what I can make up for it. And Andrew, do you always take your own photos for your composites, or do you sometimes use stock as well?
Yeah, that's a good question on that, because I think we all start with a photo or an idea, but starting from nothing. Ooh, that's interesting.
I mean, a challenge would be is if you brought in, 20 of your photos or 20 different stock images, nothing necessarily related to each other thematically, and then just, see what you create from it. Hannah says, I always start with a very clear idea and almost always finish with something completely different. Well said. Yeah. Douglas says, I never use stock. Sounds like he's pretty adamant about it.
Oh, I picked the 3 exclamation marks, and I know Doug, so Doug wouldn't take that as offense. Doug does beautiful work as well.
And Andrew says, I try and use both. Yep, stock and his own photos. Yep.
Yep. And I think for me, that's why I said, and I know there will be a few people go shock horror, but I like fantasy stuff, so I will use pixel squid if I can't get that quirky little thing. But I'm trying to photograph a teapot at the moment, and I'm not succeeding. But anyway, that's another story on that one, Andrew. So this, I think, is Andrew, and this is what we were talking about, is trying to get creatives and stimulate conversations and how we work, because what people will see is just the end product, and then they don't sort of, or it doesn't matter to them. But I think for creatives or the artistics, it is a process that we go through.
Absolutely.
And it's a process that can be methodical. It's like, I'm going to plan this shoot. This is the lighting. This is the angles. This is it. Particularly, with some photographers, and then others, it's what you said, free form, and that just goes there. But I think these conversations can help us to have a look at our style and see what works for us, and maybe another approach.
And I think it's wonderful to hear the different approaches or different perspectives on how people create. There's one thing that used to haunt me when I used to go to museums I lived in New York. There's some wonderful museums there, and also in San Francisco and in Europe, of course. But going into a museum, seeing something that really hits you, that you find very powerful, but yet you look at it for only like a minute and you walk away.
Yes.
And that used to kind of haunt me. Like here I am, an artist, and I went to art college, and I know a lot of the different processes to create things and how much work it really is to create anything. And yet I myself also will just walk away from something that's even moved me a lot only after like 1 minute. And I've kind of found that sad or a little haunting. And so that's why I like the idea of these type of conversations, is to try to get deeper into where people are coming from, and the things that they live to create their vision.
Yeah, and I think I was just having a little chuckle to Andrew's comment down there.
This one, I've got plenty of action figures. Yeah, you don't have to feed the action figures.
I had a chuckle.
I've noticed that become kind of more of a focus too in the last few years. Is I think there was John Williams, I think his last name, who was doing a series of that type of close-up photography, to the point that it makes it look like it's a real model or person as opposed to an action figure. And then I've seen other people do kind of like other toy characters that you obviously know that they're toy characters, but they put them in almost realistic or dynamic settings. And then I saw another friend, Jesse, doing close-ups of kind of, I think, the Star Wars type of characters.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, sometimes cutting them out and letting them float, giving them another dimension. But it's interesting that it's become a bigger thing. Maybe also because of the pandemic and the idea of a more kind of isolated or introverted world.
And the Lego's taking off again. That's going.
Have you seen more imagery with Legos in them?
Oh, the Lego's going berserk, doing all sorts of things. I think it's fabulous. But certainly you don't have to feed them. But now, probably, Andrew, if we can ask that question, is, do you consider yourself now visual or instinctive in how you produce? And that's why I did that dictionary definition at the beginning, is that what we perceive. So, these conversations really, I find stimulating, and just to talk with other people. And some of the comments, Andrew, are great. They've come through.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I feel like, for so many years, like 11 years now, I've been running that Photoshop and Lightroom group. and seeing a lot of great work and becoming friends with people online, and yet never asked these questions. Like, what is your thought process? What is your work process? Just kind of appreciated their work year in, year out. But it's really nice to kind of get some feedback as to how people work and what they like to do.
I'll have to check Andrew's work with the fireworks.
It sounds like he's blowing up the
exactly
the figures.
Exactly, and doing that. So, look, thanks very much for joining in. It's been great, hasn't it, Andrew? Just to, like you said,
yeah.
And you've made me think that all the images or photos or paintings that I've seen, you're right. I remember going to the Louvre and seeing Mona Lisa, and I went, "Yep, seen it. Yep, move on." And
it's kind of sad,
Monet's
right?
Work, seeing Monet, the lilies, and you go, "Yep, lilies. Yep, move on." And it's a shame. It's a shame that we don't really think of what that artist was thinking at the time, or what was the catalyst of that image.
And even with, say, the Mona Lisa, and a good example, the Monets and the lilies, some of those I think even took like years to create, right? I mean, it wasn't like they did it in a day or even a week, but maybe literally a whole year or more. So it's kind of sad that they can put their heart into it for like a year, and then we just kind of look at it for a minute. We like it, but then we just kind of walk on.
Yeah, that's made me think. And I think we do it in Instagram or, on the phone, scroll.
So yeah, Douglas says the vision creates the work, but my instincts as a trained artist take over for the finishing. That seems to be a lot of our kind of process. You have a vision, but then let your instinct kind of move you and adapt and make changes. Yeah. And then Rose asks, how do you start the creative picture? I guess it starts with what you enjoy.
Yeah, very much so, Rose. For
me, or a mood.
Yeah. For me, and I was just talking to someone just recently, I still get, and I don't know, Andrew, if you're the same, I still get enjoyment out of producing a image with no outcome. I'm not selling it. I'm not doing it for a competition. I'm doing it for me. And for me, I think if I lose that passion, that's sad, because you've got to enjoy what you do.
Yeah, I don't want to, I would never want to get to that point where like I'm creating for other people in any way, that it's got to be a vision that I believe in and I want to execute. So that's, for people who do that solely as a living, I always wonder how they keep that in balance. Like if you're doing work that sells each time, how do you keep it from not kind of having a certain look or becoming commercial in ways? Whereas people like us who do it more for like a true love, true vision. And of course we like to sell. So if anyone wants to buy our work, we're here.
Yes, that's true. I think that's true for all of us.
Slowly, I always wonder, like, how do they not kind of become a cliche in some ways, right? They become like like maybe all their work starts looking similar because they're doing it for the people who buy it all the time. So, and Douglas says, always do it for you. The only way to be genuine.
Yep. I agree on that one, Doug. You got to do it. That comes from your heart and soul.
And Andrew says, I can start an image, then let it take me along with it and see what happens at the end.
Yep.
Great.
No, there's been some really good comments in there, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm enjoying, this is a great episode. So I'm enjoying the evolution of these talks. And, we were talking about also having guests, so we'll have some guests to show their work. But I think the one thing I've learned and wanted to share is I think it is good that maybe with these talks, we share like some of our newer pieces as we go. So maybe that'll be part of the format, is that me and Sandra will show you some of our newest work. And then we can, talk about aspects of that, or talk about that in relationship to whatever the question or topic is for today, that day's conversation.
Yep.
So,
and that was just the catalyst, the vision or the instinct, and do that. So I've enjoyed it. I could keep chatting away.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Ooh.
Let's see. We got another. Barbara's here. So just listening today, soaking up lots of great insight. Thanks for being here, Barbara.
Yeah. The only thing that's missing, Andrew, is a cup of coffee. You know, us Australians are very particular with our
3
coffee.
o'clock here for me. So.
Oh, well, hold on a minute. It's afternoon tea time. I don't know.
In a couple hours, I might have a glass of wine, you know.
Well, I'm hanging for the latte with a home baked banana bread. Come on.
Yeah, that sounds good. So yes, thanks everyone for being here, and wanted to remind everybody that you can follow more of Sandra's work at sandradimagery.com. Also on Instagram at Sandra D Imagery. And then please subscribe to my YouTube, Digital Art Drew, for more digital art talks, some digital art presentations, Photoshop and photography focused live streams and tutorials. And that's Digital Art Drew on YouTube. And speaking of which, I will be having Jan Kabili from Adobe speaking this Friday. So please do subscribe and click the bell to get notified of that. That'll be quite insightful. And then if you want to see more of my work, I'm also on Behance. So behance.net, Drew Cav. And I think we have some closing comments. Linda says, I do bird photography, not too much in digital reconstruction, but I agree that whatever your medium, you need to enjoy it. Great.
Exactly, Linda. Yeah.
And Andrew says, could you start showing some of our art as well? Yeah. So Andrew, you know, I might be going away for a week or so, but maybe I will reach out to you and have you as our next guest. So you could be our first guest on the Digital Art Talk show, and you could show your work. So I'll reach out to you. And then Barbara says, absolutely. Coffee, tea, and wine, of course. You know, it's interesting. I don't drink coffee because I have a lot of energy, and I always think that coffee would make me too hyper. But I always love the smell of coffee.
Yep.
And then I also love coffee ice cream. So I love coffee ice cream. And then when I've done some research about different health subjects, I'm very curious about that. I worked at like natural food stores when I was young, whatever. I've always had an interest in that. Every time I research something, no matter what the theme is, almost always they suggest that coffee is very good for you.
Yes,
so it's good for the liver. It's good for so many different things, you know.
It's actually for elite athletes, a shot of straight coffee can actually be very, very good for their performance.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Douglas says he would love to share some of his work with the group. So yeah, we have
take some notes down. We've seen the hands raised.
Might have to do a screenshot so I can remind myself to contact you too. So Andrew and Douglas will reach out to you both, and you can be our next guest on the Digital Art Talk. So thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate you being here. And
thank you for everyone
so much,
joining.
Sandra.
Yep. Hasta la vista, baby, as the saying goes.
Have a good one, everybody.
Yep. Take care.